Here, on the Susquehanna River, 120 miles upstream of the Chesapeake Bay, at the mouth of the creek near Sunbury, Pennsylvania, water, once teeming with life, now inhospitable for even macroinvertebrate. Toxic levels of ferrous iron, manganese, ferric iron, aluminum, ferric hydroxide, and sulfuric acid taint the water, coating the surface of the creek, leaving it to the imagination what may have been the history of its unspoiled ancient past. It's certain, there's no mystery to the cause. Coal mining began in the watershed almost 200 years ago, using methods that left pyrite deposits exposed to rainfall and water runoff through open seams, mine shafts, and vent holes. This began the chain of chemical reactions that, from a geological standpoint, took a fairly short period of time to wipe the creek clean of wildlife like pike, suckers, sunfish, trout, and eel. At its headwaters, 1 mile east of Mount Carmel, over 32 miles from its mouth, carving its way through mountains, forests, and valleys, the creek's watershed has an area of 137 square miles, descending almost 1,100 feet as it flows through 9 different cities, townships, villages, and boroughs. Nearly 2 miles west of the town of Aristus, adjacent to the small village of Wilperton No. 2, the north branch of Shamokin Creek begins its journey, seeping from a coal bank. It's important to note that though coal was discovered in the area as early as 1790, coal mining was not being done in the watershed before 1810. Historically, the main uses of the land in the upper watershed are forestry and mine strippings predominantly. Urban land is less prevalent, and agricultural land is virtually non-existent. By the 1850s, anthracite coal mining had caught on like wildfire across the entire upper Shamokin Creek watershed. Records indicate a steady rise in tonnage being shipped from the watershed through the end of the century. In the early 1900s, coal mining, foundries, ironworks, nail production, agriculture, silk mills, and woolen mills were the main industries in the watershed. 113 miles, or 92% of the streams in the upper Shamokin Creek watershed, are impaired by abandoned mine drainage. Here's a great example. Beginning near the village of Locust Gap, the creek, about 4 miles long, starts in East Cameron Township and flows through Mount Carmel Township. Some of the water from Locust Creek drains into the abandoned mine shaft that leads to the Monoy Creek, escaping the Shamokin Creek watershed. The watershed of the creek has an area of almost 6 square miles. The stream is designated as impaired due to metals from abandoned mine drainage. By the 1930s, strip mining replaced deep mining as the leading production method. Coal production peaked in 1917 with over 6 million tons of coal mined annually. Also in 1917, a study on the conditions of the watershed was conducted. The creek's poor condition made mention in the Water Resource Inventory Report, a USGS circular. That year, the publication referred to the Shamokin Creek as the worst stream in the coal region due to the mine water, coal deposits, and other problems. During this time, the coal deposits were so extensive that it was one of the few creeks where it was commercially viable to recover coal from its stream bed. Though the headwaters were clear, the creek was black throughout its entire length and typically sluggish in its upper reaches. As seen earlier on the North Branch, Upper and Lower Excelsior have concrete-lined waterways preventing the water from entering abandoned mine shafts. We get a sample of this, huh? That's a pretty fresh sample right there. Here we go again. 3 drops. 1, 2, 3. This is very acidic. Clearly, very acidic. Hasn't been in the quagmire for too long. All right, you see that? That is a fresh sample from the other side of the treatment system. All right, so again, this is after it's been through the system. 1, 2, 3. At the bottom where the light hits it, you can kind of see there that it's substantially yellower on this one than this one. Here's some important information relevant to the Shamokin Creek watershed. It receives an average of 44 inches of precipitation per year and is in the Appalachian Mountain section of the Ridge and Valley Physiographic Province, with rock formations consisting of sandstone, shale, and anthracite deposits. In 1790, Quaker Run became distinguished as one of the first places anthracite coal was discovered in the watershed and the western middle coalfield. The stream's watershed has an area of 3.62 square miles. However, water from the mid-valley discharge in the North Branch Shamokin Creek watershed disappears into the mine pool due to infiltration and reappears in the watershed of Quaker Run. In January of 2022, the Shamokin Creek Restoration Alliance began a project preventing groundwater from entering the abandoned mines over a substantial length of the stream. There are 34 coal veins in the watershed, and nearly all have been either deep mined or strip mined. The Scott Ridge Mine Tunnel discharge is in the watershed of Quaker Run, as are the Colbert Mine Breach discharge and the Maysville Mine Borehole discharge. Most of the stream's flow comes from these three discharges. This is right here. It's bubbling out of the ground here. There's frogs. I just seen frogs. Which water would you say is coming out of there? I just can't get over how much water is coming out of the ground here. I mean, if it hadn't drained into the mines and was always flowing on the surface, it not only wouldn't be orange, it would also be an incredibly useful and valuable natural resource. So the water's coming up out of that. Several acid mine drainage points are seen here, clearly traced in the contrasting snow. These acid mine drainage swamps are probably the most desolate and uninhabited places in the watershed. Dominated by mosquitoes and acid-loving plants, it's a testament to nature's perseverance. Buck Run. The stream running through the once inhabited coal patch town of Big Mountain is now primarily fed by the Big Mountain discharge. Take a sample right here. Alright. The water is coming down here, runs into that, goes in here, and goes across the street to this here. And let's get this one. So we got this empty. Alright. So this is the after, and this is the before. So you can kind of see the difference a little bit when you look at it this way. Before and after. Coal Run once flowed with enough water to support 3 coal breakers, as well as the miners and their families. Most, if not all, lived near the coal breakers in little coal patch towns like Luke Fiddler, Hickory Ridge, and Hickory Swamp. Now only flowing in its upper lengths after heavy precipitation. Perhaps the missing water is reappearing as a substantial acid mine drainage discharge in Coal Run about 1,000 feet before its confluence with the Shamokin Creek. The stone mason retaining walls that line the creek were built during the Great Depression. Constructed by the Works Progress Administration, a work relief program created by President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, the program was intended to shake America out of the Great Depression. Carbon Run's watershed covers over 8 3/4 miles. In cooperation with the Shamokin Creek Restoration Alliance, the AOAA has planted hundreds of trees surrounding the Blue Hill treatment system. This system uses a limestone trench to raise the water's pH levels, keeping the water below the surface to reduce its exposure to oxygen. Site 42. A flow rate of 179.5 gallons a minute was measured July 15, 1999. In the year 2000, pH measurements of the water were 6.12 before entering the treatment system and 7.31 exiting. Take it from right here. It's not very active, but it's clean. Okay. So this is before. Here is the pond where this system ends. There goes a frog. I heard a frog. There's fish in here. This system is on the mend for sure, but the populations are growing. Frogs, fish, and macroinvertebrates are returning to the area. This is, again, this is our after. This is the before, and this is the after the treatment. So we'll go through here. We'll go 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Let's shake it. Okay. So now this is there. This is greener than this. So this is yellow and this is a green. So this is the after, and it's definitely cleaner than when it goes in, which is there. I can see it. I can see with my eyes that this one is greener and that one is yellower. So it is working. That limestone is definitely working. I'm hoping the camera can see the same thing I'm seeing. But yeah, that worked. This system has been in place for several years and is making great improvements in the water's quality. Still following Carbon Run towards Route 125, we'll look at the third treatment system in the Carbon Run watershed. We're just going to take a sample of the water here. All right, it's the same water that's going into the system. Just a few feet. That pipe there runs into the treatment system. So let's go look at that now. And collect a sample of this water after it's been through this system. Dump that out, get another one, there we go. That's a good one right there. All right, we'll put the cork on it. We'll dump a little out. Okay, I'll put the cork on it. 1, 2, 3. All right, this is the first one. Put the cork on. Looks a little green initially. Initially, it's very green. That's blue. That is in the healthy range of water. Now, let's hope that this one is at least bluer. One, two, three. Oh, that's mine. Using the wrong thing. And then this here. All right, that does look bluer. Slightly, just the slightest bit. But the one is bluer. So, it's doing something. Near the middle of its journey to its confluence with the Shamokin Creek, culm banks line the stream path, making Carbon Run especially prone to flooding, more so than other streams in the area. The Sterling Mine Discharge. Okay, so here we are, 1934, at the Sterling mine shaft. I'm going to take a sample here of the water. It's amazing. It looks very clear. It looks so clear. Ooh, it stinks. It stinks awful. You don't really smell it that bad till you get down low, but it stinks pretty bad. All right, so this is a very layman version of how this is supposed to be done, but 1, 2, 3. Looking a little yellower. But I'm gonna have to get out the little chart to see yellow. Yeah, I would say that is it's lighter than that, 6.4, but it's, I don't know, 6.1, 6.2. With a watershed area of a little over 1.5 square miles, flowing from the western end of Cole Township, Furnace Run once provided the renowned ice-cold mountain waters of Edgewood Lake. Now barely a trickle, much of the water was diverted into underground mines in the 1950s to ease the burden of flood insurance on the landowners in the stream's watershed. Over time, even the stream's path has been concealed substantially by tunnels and canals. Look at the amount of water coming out of that hole. There's no stream forming this, on the ground. There's no stream over this mountain that you're gonna, across the highway and you go up, oh, there's a stream running into the ground. No, this is all coming out of the ground at this speed. Probably this isn't even that heavy based on the rust of the pipe. It's, look at the edge there. It's oranger, up another 5-6 inches. So the flow that is normally going through here, who knows? But obviously, this is a tremendous amount of water that's been exposed to, the mines and then picks up the heavy metal. So what we're gonna do, we have test tube. This is a sterilized test tube, clean test tube. We're gonna take a sample of this water right here. Whoop. Get a good sample here. That's right there. I guess that. Try to get a little more. We're gonna get the fresh stuff. This fresh water coming right out of the mine shaft for the hole now. We're gonna get that. All right. Okay. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Come on, 3. Okay. And then we're going to put it in the water. Okay, we're going to shake it up. And this water is in the 6.4 range. To be there, experiencing the awful smell, watching the acid mine water gushing out, you really get a feel for how bad it is, especially considering there are so many acid mine drainage discharge points like this in the upper Shamokin Creek watershed. Continuing down the creek, there are no additional acid mine discharges in the watershed. Some great examples of creeks and streams not affected by acid mine discharge in the watershed are Trout Run, Eagle Run, Benny's Run, Miller's Run, Lick Creek, Pocahontas Creek. This area is called Diebler's Flat. In 1936, flooding caused massive amounts of coal to gather here, where the grade of the creek is very low. The coal covered almost 200 acres, some areas as deep as 15 feet. Little Shamokin Creek. The creek's watershed has an area of 37 square miles. The creek descends 960 feet from its headwaters to its mouth. It's the only creek in the watershed that fish are being stocked, which is a great sign that it's doing well and the community is engaging. In 2002, the Little Shamokin Creek Watershed Association formed. Soon after, 25.5 acres of the creek were converted into a recreational area by the Little Shamokin Creek Watershed Association. The Little Shamokin Creek Watershed Association is a great example of how community involvement is the foundation of success. Several water mills were constructed on the creek, some as early as the 1790s. The creek has been supplying water for Sunbury since 1913, with 5 reservoirs and a capacity of over 50 million gallons of fresh water. Plum Creek. A tributary of the Little Shamokin Creek, it has a watershed of a little over 10 miles. The creek descends nearly 200 feet along its 4.7-mile journey. Obviously, I'm no biologist, geologist, or scientist of any kind. My aquarium water pH test, while visually appealing, is no replacement for actual, properly processed pH testing. But even with these simple sample tests, it's clear the treatment systems work and should be expanded across the entire affected area of the watershed. Mistakes happen. Sometimes mistakes happen on top of mistakes, making compound mistakes. But it's not a complete loss if we've learned something and make smart changes moving forward. Shamokin Creek Restoration Alliance is an organization that could really use your help. Not just in raising funds, but time, real involvement to make lasting impact. Please, help be a part of the solution. Educating the community, reinvesting in our ownership of this incredible natural resource, and being proud of its future as well as its past.